Hey guys, Chris of the Polish Geek here, and I decided I'm going now to review and talk about Dark Souls 3 because, yes, after I beaten Elden Ring a couple times, I decided to replay Dark Souls 3 because that was my very first FromSoftware game I've beaten, and I loved it so much that I decided to replay the game and see how well it holds up after Elden Ring. And spoiler alert, game is still amazing. Yep, as much as I love Elden Ring and as much as my favorite FromSoftware game, Dark Souls 3 is still a fantastic, incredible game in its own right. And it still totally is my second favorite FromSoftware game. Some people, I even so argue, it's in some ways better than Elden Ring. And as shocked as I am to say this, I can actually see that. As I said, Elden Ring is still by far my favorite FromSoftware game, but I can totally see some people preferring Dark Souls 3 because this game is also super amazing, and we will dive into it right now. Like Elden Ring, you can create your own character. I generally like playing as a knight, and I think the armor on the knight looks really awesome. First Dark Souls game, while an amazing game, I feel it suffers from very slow combat. Dark Souls 3 thankfully fixes it and gives you an equally fast combat, kind of like one in Elden Ring or Bloodborne. The atmosphere of the game feels kind of dark, very fitting. Just like Elden Ring felt kind of colorful, this feels very grayish. And not saying Elden Ring wasn't a dark game, like it was very dark and the lore was super dark, but Dark Souls 3 has an outright gloomy atmosphere. And I love it. I think it fits the game very, very much. The lore is super amazing, and just like in Elden Ring, you're not directly told or shown what is happening. You have to piece it all together while playing the game and reading on item descriptions. That's what's so amazing about FromSoftware games in general actually. They're more about the lore than they are about the actual story, and I love that. I'm a huge lore junkie. That said, I will not talk too much details about the lore, just like I didn't in Elden Ring. As amazing as it is, I feel it's best if you experience it for yourself. What might be considered better about Dark Souls 3 than Elden Ring is that the game's linear nature in some ways makes the game much harder. Elden Ring sure isn't easy, but the open world gives very much a chance to exploit it and level up and be overpowered. In Dark Souls 3, you don't really have that option, so if you encounter a very hard boss, that's actually the moment you're supposed to encounter the boss, and you're supposed to either learn from your mistakes and keep trying on until you finally get it. I often rage whenever I'm defeated by a boss, but ambition always keeps me coming back until I finally beat it, and I feel very satisfied and rewarded once I do beat the boss. Yes, it can be very frustrating to constantly keep losing to the boss, but once you do beat the boss, you feel so rewarded and satisfied with that. And speaking of boss battles, they are also very amazing here. Literally some of the best boss battles in FromSoftware history and best ones in all three Dark Souls games. And I don't really think there are any less quality than the bosses in Elden Ring. I actually think they're very comparable to my favorite bosses in Elden Ring. And I will totally do best Dark Souls 3 bosses video, just like I did best Elden Ring bosses. Some bosses look amazing, some look outright creepy and scary, and all of them have very interesting lore, and most are ultra fun to fight and kill, and then feel so rewarded and satisfied with that. Regular enemies and mini-bosses look also awesome, like in other FromSoftware games. Let's see me fighting some of them. What makes bonfires though different from Sites of Grace is that unlike Sites of Grace, you can't level up on bonfires. Bonfires are simply used as checkpoints and so that you could fast travel from place to place. Leveling up here is a little different than in Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, in order to level up, like you just had to be at the Site of Grace. That's it. Sites of Grace were used to level up. But here in Dark Souls 3, in order to level up, you specifically have to go back to the Firelink Shrine and talk to the lady, and she will always level you up. And just like in Elden Ring, you meet various interesting NPCs. Instead of Round Table Hold, your shelter here is Firelink Shrine, and this place feels equally mysterious while also very peaceful, just as Round Table Hold did. Or I should say it reversed, since obviously Firelink Shrine was first. And voice acting of the NPCs is very great. Many of those NPCs give you very interesting side quests too. And like in Elden Ring, you really have to pay attention or you might make a mistake and not do a side quest. And just like Elden Ring had Sites of Grace where you could take a rest and kind of like have a checkpoint in your game, here instead there are bonfires. The levels and environments are amazing and immersive. Cathedral of the Deep is amazing. For example, it gives me huge vibes of a medieval Catholic cathedral, which is technically what it's supposed to be actually. Hidden level Archdragon Peak is also amazing. It's optional, but it's so amazing that it sucks to skip it. And it has the best boss battle in the whole game. But I will talk of this boss in my best boss battle video. Kingdom of Lothric is also amazing, as is City of Anor Londo. Literally sometimes I just enjoy to stop at some places just to enjoy the scenery and fully immerse myself in the amazing setting. What people often loved in first Dark Souls was how interconnected the world was and how you could return to your starting point through shortcuts. But here though, you really feel like you're on a journey. And really, the only way to return to Firelink Shrine is through bonfire. Yep, that's right. I very much like that the world isn't very interconnected. That way, you truly feel like you are on a journey. Dark Souls 3 is such a fantastic game, and while I find first Dark Souls to have flaws, Dark Souls 3 perfected them all, and it is basically first Dark Souls with all of its problems completely removed. So, we see that, as incredible as Elden Ring is, and even though it's still my personal favorite FromSoftware game, Dark Souls 3 hasn't aged badly at all, and it's still an amazing game in its own right. Like, I can only see some people favoring it over Elden Ring. I prefer Elden Ring, I'm a huge open world guy and I love the lore of Elden Ring, but Dark Souls 3 has also an amazing lore of its own, and it's objectively more, thanks to the fact that it's more linear than Elden Ring, it's actually more challenging at times. Plus, for some people, less is better actually. But ultimately, in the end of the day, both are fantastic games, both are some of my favorite games of all time, and they are definitely take my top 2 spots as two best FromSoftware games, and 2 fantastic games. And by the way, with Dark Souls 3, as I already said, I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did with Elden Ring. I'm going to do my top 10 favorite boss battles in Dark Souls 3. And because Dark Souls 3 had 2 DLCs released long before I beaten the game, DLC bosses will be included, especially that DLC bosses are actually some of the best bosses in the entire game. So, thank you guys for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, please tell me what's your favorite FromSoftware game. Whether you prefer Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring, or maybe like Sekiro or Bloodborne. Comment below, let me know, and please subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later, bye!